With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Welcome to another episode of Into the Fray. If you're new here, I hope you're enjoying it enough to head to your podcatcher of choice to rate and review the show. This helps it aggregate across the listening platforms, which will turn into more people willing to come on and share their encounters. If you've been listening for years, I'd ask that you please do the same. Home base for Into the Fray is intothefrayradio.com. There you will find all episodes, blog posts, and get bonus content info. Speaking of that bonus content, on top of the free weekly show, I also produce bonus content for Patreon and Apple Podcast Premium. On either platform, you get all bonus audio episodes and early releases, each one ad-free, of course. Full disclosure though, Patreon has a bit more in the way of perks because of their interface. Over there, you will get video versions of patron-only chats, the private Discord channel, and merch at certain pledge levels. So head to patreon.com/intothefray or your Apple Podcatcher app to sign up for bonus content today. You can find me on the big three social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The Linktree link in each of my bios will take you to all the places you want to venture regarding ITF, including Small Town Monsters documentaries, various ways to listen to the show, Beyond the Fray books, contact info for me, and more. And lastly, and really honestly most importantly, if you'd like to share your encounter or encounters on Into the Fray, the best way to get in touch is by emailing me at shannon@intothefrayradio.com. And without further ado, let's get to the interview. So on this edition of Into the Fray, I welcome Kari on with me, and she is in Oregon and has plenty of strange things to share. Kari, welcome on the show.
Hello.
So you wrote me an email because of the fact that, and you just mentioned this before we officially started, but you were listening to the show and something kind of odd happened, and it kind of made you think, gosh, maybe I should reach out to Shannon and share these experiences.
Yeah, I was listening to the podcast. I work from home, and I brew myself a pot of tea in the morning, and so I have like a little basket that has the loose tea leaves in it, and it was sitting on like kind of like a little plate on a flat surface, like right next to me. And right when one of your guests was talking about how they had some ghosts in their house, like literally they were talking about all these other strange things, and then they go, oh, and let me get into this, I had some strange things happening at my house, these ghosts. And almost as soon as they said that, it flipped upside down onto the ground. I just was like, that's strange. I can't ignore that. There's some things that we ignore around the house, but I couldn't really ignore that happening.
But you have had other strange things in the house that you just tend to ignore.
Yeah, we've heard noises. In our bathroom, I think it's been 3 times now, we'll be getting ready for bed, like mid-conversation, and it sounds like someone slapping the side of the wall really hard. Just like, not like punching the wall, just slapping the side of the wall right next to us. And the first time, we have a laundry room on the other side of that wall, and we're like, oh, maybe something fell in the laundry room. Like, this is an old house. It could be, unfortunately, like a rodent or something got into the laundry room. Let's go check it out. He went and looked. My boyfriend went and looked, and he's like, there's nothing happened. And we're like, okay, whatever. Like, it has kind of a strange vibe in the bathroom anyway. And so we kind of just wrote it off. And then it happened again. My daughter was we put her in her stroller when we get ready for bed just to kind of contain her. And it had happened again. We're like, okay. And then it happened one more time. And I don't remember that there was really any significance to what we were talking about. I think the first time we were talking about actually moving, and that happened. And then the second time, I don't remember what it was. I think my daughter was kind of fussing around. Oh, she had a dirty diaper. She was fussing around. She had a dirty diaper. And so I was about to change her, and that happened. And it was almost like, okay, I'm going.
Well, then that's also kind of strange then about the timing of you guys speaking about moving when the slapping happened, because the fact that then you're going, well, does that mean no, you don't want us to go, or yes, please get out?
Yeah, right? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's kind of strange. That would make me jump, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The slapping sound. And like you say, it's a very, you can identify that kind of a sound, and immediately you're going, that sounds like a flat palm against a wall.
It was very loud. It made me jump both times.
You guys ever like sage or talk out loud to maybe whatever it is, or has it not happened enough to where you feel like you need to do such things?
Well, I kind of take the approach that, like, we kind of just ignore it when something happens. I think we've also had things like fall. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any certain, like, specific experiences other than the slapping on the wall, but we hear things will fall sometimes. And then one time, I kind of mentioned this before, but one time we have, like, some lamps in our living room, and I walked into the living room and I saw a shadow. And I was like, was that my shadow? Like, that didn't look like my shadow. And I kind of reenacted it to see if I could make it happen again. And it was not my shadow. So I don't know what it was. The shadow of a person, like, walking, just moved across the wall. And I'm like, oh, that's strange. And then that too, like, I didn't really say anything. The only time I've really said anything is when, like, the tea, when the tea flipped upside down, the tea leaves. Sometimes I'll take the tea leaves and brew another pot of tea. And so I kind of jokingly said, like, oh, thanks a lot. Like, I was going to make another pot of tea with those leaves, and now they're all over the floor. But otherwise, we just kind of ignore it.
I don't know the timeline exactly of, and I do want to start at the beginning and go in order as you sent the email. I do enjoy that. Thank you for doing that.
Oh,
Do
yeah.
you think there is a chance, though, because most everything else that you're going to share has to do with the out of doors? Do you think there is a chance that you brought something home with you?
I've thought about it, and I was trying to think back to, like, when things started happening in our house. And the slapping on the wall happened pretty early on. That was before we really went out to the woods very much.
Okay.
But it did pick up a little bit for a while. And there was a point in time where I was working an opposite shift from my boyfriend. So I was home in the evenings alone with our daughter. And I'd be getting ready for bed, and I kind of would get this, like, creepy vibe, like something was, like, watching me, or like the feeling of someone really close to you behind your back over your shoulder. And that happened for a while, but it hasn't happened anymore. We're both on the same schedule now, so he's home with me in the evenings anyway. It did kind of pick up for a while, and I kind of wondered if maybe we did bring something home with us at one point.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about that because in some of the stories that you shared that we're going to cover, it's a little bit similar, right? This feeling of foreboding or being watched, and in some cases you actually did see some things, or your boyfriend saw some things to confirm that that was the case, but there are some
Mhm.
similarities there then.
It does seem that way, yeah. I mean, most of the time when things have happened to us out in the woods, there's one specific place that we go to that almost every time that something has happened there, it has this a little bit of a scarier feeling to it, and I don't like it there. But otherwise, other than that, I don't have that kind of like creeped out vibe, even when things happen.
So this part is interesting to me because, and you've heard the stories. They'll say, well, I've had this my whole life, or I feel like it's been passed down through my family, something like that. But for you, you started out the email by saying you feel like this all began with a simple discussion about UFOs.
Yeah. So my coworker and I were talking, and I don't even remember what led to the conversation, but I kind of jokingly was like, "Oh yeah, sure, whatever." Because I was like, I don't know if I believe in UFOs, basically the way that most people have felt up until this point in time, now that things are becoming a little more clear as far as them existing. But I joked and I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And she was like, "No, no, like they're real, and there's things that are happening more and more." And I'm like, huh, really? And so I started to look into it, and obviously started to see like some of the stories that were coming out about UFOs, or what they're calling UAPs now. And I was like, wow, maybe they really are real. And like literally the weekend after that conversation, it all started happening.
Well, yeah, let's dive into some of those encounters.
So I think the first thing that really happened there was we went on a hike to one of our favorite trails, and we were coming back. It's like an out and back kind of hike trail. We were walking back, and I don't even remember the conversation, but we got upset with each other, and so I took off, not took off. We were at a point in the trail where I went off to one side, and he kind of went off to the other, a little bit away, a ways away. And he said that he could still see me. I didn't see him anywhere, but I was just sitting kind of looking off into the trees, and I was kind of emotional and just sitting there thinking about it all. And then I hear behind me, "Hey, I'm over here." And normally, like he and I, this is going to sound cheesy, we call each other babe a lot. And so when we're irritated with each other, there is no babe. It's just, "Hey, I'm over here." And so I was like, "Oh," and it sounded like his voice. And I'm like, well, that would be pretty normal considering the situation that we were in. And I was ticked off, so I didn't turn around. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Good for you for being over there. And so he didn't come up to me, he didn't say anything else. I didn't hear anything. And so I turn around and there's no one there. And I'm like, huh, like maybe he wandered back off, but I didn't hear him afterwards. And then after I turned back around, I'm just sitting there thinking about it. And I'm like, well, maybe it was someone else on the trail. Maybe some people were walking by. Maybe I just didn't hear it right. And they were talking to each other or something, like, "Hey, I'm over here." He comes back over. We get together. I didn't really say anything. I was just like, that was kind of strange. And I kind of kept it to myself because I just figured it was some other people on the trail, because I thought it sounded like him, but not really. Maybe I just misheard something. And so we're walking back to the parking area, and we get there and there's no one else there. And this is the end. The road to get to that trail doesn't go anywhere else. So it's not like it's a stop on the side of a road that goes through. It would be like you'd go there, it has a dead end, you have to turn around and leave. So we get out there and there's no car, and I'm like, whoa. And I told him what happened. And he said he was standing off some distance where he was, just looking around. I think he was looking for mushrooms or something. He said that he thought I should let her know I'm over here. He almost said, "Hey, I'm over here." And he said that he was looking at me. And as soon as he was thinking that, like, "Hey, I should let her know that I'm over here," he said he saw me turn around and look back at the trail. And he thought that was kind of strange. And I'm like, well, that's pretty bizarre that you were about to tell me, "Hey, I'm over here," and then I heard it. And then from there, it's just pretty much most of the time that we go to that area, something strange happens.
Yeah, and this is the creepy area, right? I mean, this is the only one, as you mentioned earlier, that you get this really not super great vibe.
So this area actually, it has had a lot of creepy things happen, but it doesn't creep me out.
Mm.
Yeah, there's another area in on that mountain where we have had less things happen, but it feels aggressive. It feels like it's more of a, like I don't want to be there. We have a little bit of a, and it's that's another thing that's kind of strange about it is we have a little bit of a protective feeling about this area, that it's like we kind of want to respect it. We have a sense of respect in that we don't want to have a bunch of people show up and start messing around with whatever's there.
Yeah, I think that the second you start getting into a mimic situation, that is super creepy. That gave me the chills. And
Yeah.
as you say, that's another layer to it. He probably witnessed the very moment that you thought you heard him saying, "Hey, I'm over here," and you turned around and he's nowhere to be found.
Yeah. And I even asked him, like, so you didn't see anybody over there? And he's like, no, there was no one there. I'm like, that's creepy.
Except it
Like,
sounded like him. I mean, you would have put
yeah.
money on the fact that it was him.
Yeah. At first, I thought it was him. And then when he didn't come over to me or say anything else, I just thought maybe it was someone else on the trail and I just didn't hear it properly.
And then the next thing, and this along with the whole owl thing, which will come up later, but this one is also interesting and it might go along with another mimic situation, whatever that mimic might be that we're talking about. But this has to do with doves.
Yeah. So, and I had sent, I don't know if you were able to really look at it very much. It wasn't really much to look at, but it was more like to hear what sounds like almost like a dove calling to each other. It's happened before when I took the recording that I had sent you, the video. It had already happened in the past. And I was like, this is so strange. I want to catch this because I want to listen to it again. And basically, it just sounds like we don't hear it otherwise. We don't ever hear it in the forest. It doesn't happen all the time, but it sounds like, say, one dove in one area calling across to another dove, just like a hoo hoo kind of thing. And they'll go back and forth. And even in other times, other than that time, we'll be out doing whatever. And I just hear it a little bit. And then it doesn't happen again. And it's like birds typically continue to make noises if they're calling back and forth to each other. And it's not usually like a one-off kind of thing, but in these circumstances it is kind of a one-off. Like it doesn't happen all the time.
So during that same mention of the doves, this is where you kind of start to mention wood knocking, and then you actually also say that you've heard like almost howler monkey type sounds.
Yeah, so and that was like we when we're trying to figure out what the heck we were hearing, we obviously jumped on YouTube and we're like trying to listen to different nature sounds to figure out what it was. And we're like, well, maybe it's like a monkey type sound, like the whole Sasquatch, like supposedly they sound like apes. It's like maybe that's what it was. And so we came across this video and it was like a zoo video or something like that. And these howler monkeys were like making these noises. And at one point, not really sure if they were howler monkeys. They're like the ones where their throat swells up when they take a big breath
Yeah,
into like,
that's a strange sound. Yes.
yeah. And it was that kind of sound. And it's not quite a call, but yeah, that's the closest thing that we could find to what we were hearing.
Did it sound super far away?
Sometimes it does. There's been times where we hear it really far away and then it seems to get closer, or we'll hear it closer and it gets further away.
And this is after you've done wood knocking?
This will be sometimes we don't do anything. Sometimes we're just hanging out there, just listening, because now that it's happened so much, sometimes we just sit and listen and see what we can hear. But other times, Usually with the wood knocking, like if we do some kind of a wood knock, the response is typically a wood knock back. And with the wood knocks, it's the same kind of thing. We'll hear it either closer and we'll hear another, like almost like different areas. Like one wood knock comes from one part and one will come from another. And they'll either get closer or they'll get further away.
Does that creep you guys out when that occurs?
It did at first. We were kind of like, wow, that's strange. Like maybe it's a woodpecker. And they were like, no, I don't think so. Because it doesn't sound like a woodpecker kind of like quick knock. Sometimes it does, though. Sometimes we'll hear quick knocks that it's like, it does sound kind of like a woodpecker, but it's not quite the same. And that's the thing is these things happen and they sound similar to things, but it's not quite right.
Mm-hmm.
Just like with his voice, it sounded like him, but not quite.
Oh, so it was a little bit off, in fact. Okay.
His voice, yeah, at first, like I said, like it sounded like him, but then I'm like, was it him? Like kind of, maybe it wasn't. It kind of sounded not quite like him.
So
And
these,
again, I'm not sure. I
sorry,
wasn't sure if I was like convincing myself, like, well, he's not there, so it must be something else.
these wood knocks though, is it always you knock once and then it'll be, there's a knock once over here and then a knock once over here? Do you ever try doing, knock, knock, and then there's two knocks and two knocks? Is it like that?
Yeah. Sometimes we'll get like the same amount of knocks back. There was a point in time in another area near there where he and I were, what did we do? Oh, we had pulled over the car and he had to go pee. We were talking and we were just sitting there talking and we heard it, but we didn't recognize it. We weren't like, we didn't say, oh, do you hear that? We just kind of kept talking, even though we both could hear what was going on. And it literally sounded like these wood knocks were surrounding us. Like it wasn't just one and two, it was like 4 or 5.
I mean, even if you could, quote unquote, explain it away by it being people, it's still creepy. No matter who or what it is, that would give me the creeps. You're like, oh, well, who's wanting to respond back? And they happen to be in different locations. What?
Mm-hmm. I think that's even creepier. I think I get more creeped out thinking it's a person than an animal or something else.
Yeah, and there's a story that you are going to share shortly that definitely gave me the willies about something like that. So, yeah, no thank you on that. All right, well, how about this, the growl right next to you guys?
Oh, yeah. So, same area. There had been some storms, and so there were a bunch of trees in the road. So we went like as far as we could down the road. I was like really pregnant. I was 7 months pregnant. Probably shouldn't have been doing that, but whatever. And so we drove as far as we could, and these trees were blocking the road. And we're like, okay, well, we pulled over, got out, and being pregnant, I feel like we're always peeing in the woods. Everything has to do with us peeing in the woods. But we went off to the side, and I went off and did my thing, and he was off looking around and kind of went out of sight. And I got a little nervous. Like I got a feeling like, hey, don't go too far away from me. And he's like, oh, I found bear poop over here. I'm like, well, then we should definitely not be over here. And so we went back down to the road and we walked down the road and crossed over a few of the down trees, kind of right before the parking area. There was like this old growth, like really big tree that had been uprooted that fell over. And it was so large we couldn't get over the top of it. I mean, we could if I had scrambled over the top of it, but being that pregnant, I didn't want to. There was like some moss that had fallen off the tree onto the ground. And before this, we were hearing knocking. But because it had happened so frequently in that area before, we kind of just ignored it. We were like, oh, there's knocking happening. Like, something must be out there. And I don't know why we didn't take it seriously. But I bent down and picked up the moss. I was like smelling it because I don't know why. I'm smelling it and I hear we're kind of discussing it. Oh, it was the mycelium. I'm like, oh, do you smell this? It smells like mushrooms. We're kind of like looking at it and we hear this like I can't even reenact it. It was this deep, low growl. Like it sounded like it was right next to us. And we both looked at each other and we're like, okay, it's time to go. Like we shouldn't be here anymore. I think something's trying to tell us to get. And so we're like, okay, bye, we're gonna go now. And we turned around and left and kind of felt like we were being watched all the way back. But again, it's like we just heard a growl, so of course we feel like we're being watched.
And I just want to mention real quick, because you brought up the videos that you sent me, and I just want to go ahead and put it out there, guys. Yeah. I'm not going to share those with anyone, so don't email me, please, and ask for those videos. Those are just kind of so I could orientate myself to the surroundings and all of that, because it's got her family, her baby in it, and all that stuff. So those are just for moi. Just wanted to throw that out there. Okay, now this next section, also quite creepy, extremely unique. It has to do with an arrow and an earring.
Oh, yeah. So same area. Because it's a dead-end road, it's kind of a safe space to know that there's not going to be anyone around if you don't see anybody around. Just gotten a new bow. We decided to go out there and test it out. And so there were new arrows. And so we had to, like, they were cut to size and everything. But we had to put the blunt tips on the end of them, or the practice tips. Obviously, I'm new at this. I'm not really sure exactly what they're called, but putting them together, and I was like getting situated, and my boyfriend had the arrows over in a box. And I remember one of them falling on the ground, and I remember thinking like, oh, don't forget to pick that one up. It fell on the ground. And I go over and load everything up, and I've got 4 arrows, but there should be 5. And so I look down, I'm like, oh yeah, that one fell on the ground, and it's not there. And so I go, where's that arrow? Where's that one arrow that fell on the ground? He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, one of these arrows fell on the ground, but it's nowhere around here. Do you know where it went? He's like, no. I'm like, huh, okay, that's strange. Whatever, like maybe I misplaced it. I'm forgetting, like I'm losing my mind over here. And so I go back a ways from the target, and I go to shoot, and I'm like, I wear, my ears are stretched, and so I wear plugs. It caught my ear and knocked the plug loose, and it fell on the ground. But I didn't want to stop because I wanted to see where the arrow went, if I actually got the target. So I didn't stop right away and look down to where it fell. And then, once I looked at the target, I didn't move from where I was either because I didn't want to forget where I was. And so I stopped and looked down, and I'm looking around and I can't find it. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, it was right here. Like, it had to have fallen right here. And I'm looking everywhere. I'm like, maybe it's blending into the ground. So we get our phones out, and we've got our flashlight on our phone trying to catch the light on it or something. Like, maybe I'm just not seeing it. And we never found it. And we never found the arrow either.
So it was very, very dark at this time, though?
No, it was like afternoon. It was light out.
Oh, I see. You just got the flashlight just like if it would
just to try
reflect
and catch
or something. I gotcha. Okay. I was like, man, you guys are shooting at night. You're hardcore.
No, we were just trying to catch the light with it or something.
Gotcha. How close?
See if it would stand out.
How close to the wood line had that arrow fallen?
Kind of right near it. But it's kind of a more open woodline area. Like, it's not a very dense area where we were at. Like, where we were shooting towards and where we were setting up.
I mean, any strange feelings, or did anything, once the arrow goes and then the earring is now missing, was there a conversation after that? Like, okay, here's 2 strange things. Let's talk about this.
Oh, yeah. We discuss it all the time. We're like, what was that? But what are you going to do? Like, it happened. There's no explanation for it. So we're kind of just like, huh, okay, that's just another weird thing that happened in this area again, I guess.
Right.
And so we kind of just write it off. Like, we discuss it, but then that's as far as we can go because we can't figure out what the heck happened.
I mean, I suppose that's why the subject line of your email was Trickster in the Woods, right? Because that's exactly, up until now especially, is like, that's their MO. That's their 101. That's what they do.
Yeah, and, like, the only thing we can think is, like, people talk about Bigfoot in the woods, and it's like, well, I don't know, because it's not like we haven't seen any evidence of it. We've heard things that line up with what other people have said, but we can't say for sure that that's what that is, and so it almost seems like an invisible force that likes to play with us.
But at the same time, it's then at some points, it's knocking on trees like a Bigfoot does, or making, if now that's assuming this is all a blanket statement, it would also then be making the howler type monkey sounds, right? This
Like,
strange, like guttural, and people should look that up if they can. This, I can't do, I'm not going to try. It's going to sound ridiculous, but I know what you're talking about. And it's a very
yeah,
unique sound. It's something you'd hear in a zoo, not out in the middle of the woods in the state of Oregon.
yeah, exactly, and that's why it's like we don't really we kind of assume it might be a Bigfoot kind of thing, but because of all the strange things that have happened, it doesn't line up physically with what people say their experiences are with Bigfoot.
Right. All it lines up with is that the mimics seem to just enjoy doing what their namesake is, and that's mimicking other things that are probably flesh and blood in the woods.
Exactly. That seems to be the most like I guess they all have that in common. All our experiences kind of have that in common is there's a lot of mimicry that happens.
I mean, I hope it's not a situation where the mimics take notice of you and then I don't know if it's a they or just a one, whatever.
Yeah.
I hope it's not a situation where they go, you guys look really cool to go home with. I mean, that's not good.
No, no, thank you. You guys
Yeah.
can just keep hanging out in the woods.
Y'all stay there now. You got plenty of room to stretch out. Please stay.
Yes.
So, all right. So, the culmination of the earring and the arrow is there is no culmination. I mean, they were just plain old gone.
Yeah, that was it. We never found him again. We went, obviously, we go back to that area pretty frequently, and we never found it again. I even, like, I think it was like the following weekend. I'm like, man, I want to find that plug because I liked it. And I'm like, well, I guess anyone could go in there. It's not like it's not a busy area, but it's not a busy area. So people do drive through there. And I'm like, they could have driven over it. I think it was a glass plug, so they could have crushed it, or it could be buried into the rocks because it's like a gravel kind of area. So at this point, I'm like, did it get lost? Like, I'm not really sure. I question myself all the time. Like, what really happened? I don't know.
What color was it?
It was like an iridescent clear color. It's like a clear glass with like an iridescent color to it.
There's a Tesla that drives around town that is wrapped just like that. It's a little over the top for even a Tesla. So I know what you're talking about with the iridescence,
Yeah.
like an opal almost.
Yeah.
So you've been back there. Obviously, I'm sure you would have put it in the email, but no other oddities once you've gone back there.
One other thing that had happened that was kind of strange, like with the other things that have happened there, like I said, like with the growl, we heard knocking first. And with the arrow and the earring, we didn't get a vibe or feel or anything there before it happened. So sometimes we go and you can feel it. It feels off. It's very quiet. It's a little bit of a weird feeling. But anyway, we went and I think we had just gone out for a drive and got out of the car, and I was holding my kid, and my boyfriend again was wandering around off to the side, and I just was like looking down the road, and she at this point was walking, and so we kind of took her and we walked down the road and walked back, and so I was holding her and looking down the road, and there was like some sun coming through the trees, and I noticed there was a leaf like floating in the air in a patch of sunlight. And I'm like, that's weird. Like, I didn't see that before. I would think, it was probably hanging from a spider web from a tree or something. And so I'm watching this leaf and there's no wind. It's very still out. And the leaf is kind of like moving, kind of waving back and forth. So I'm like, well, if it's a spider web, where's the spider web? And so I kind of like shifted my point of observation so I could see if maybe the light would catch the web that might have been holding it up. And I'm looking and I don't see any web. There's no, like, the sun would, kind of shine off of it. I'm like, that's strange. Like, there's no web there. And as soon as I thought to myself, like, how is that leaf floating there? There's no web. It just dropped straight to the ground. And it was so still out that it literally just dropped straight down. And I'm like, oh my God. I turned to my boyfriend. I'm like, did you see that? He's like, what? I'm like, there's a leaf floating over here. I don't know what happened. I can't understand. And we went over and we tried to find the leaf, and there was a leaf there, but there was no web on it or anything. So I'm not sure how it was floating there.
So he did not see that event.
No. And sometimes that seems to be the case. Like, it's almost like I'm meant to see things by myself, and sometimes he's meant to see things by himself.
Now, did you get any kind of feeling about that event or not really? It was just kind of like it blew your mind. You didn't know how to explain that.
It was kind of like the arrow. Like, I didn't have a weird feeling about it. I was just like, that's really strange. Like, I don't know how that would happen. It was really pretty because the sun was catching it. It was shining through, it was lighting the leaf up. I don't understand how it could have been floating there without anything holding it up.
How far away from it were you, if you could guess?
Maybe about 8 to 10 feet.
Oh, you're real close.
Yeah.
Oh, so I mean, in all honesty, you really definitely should have been able to see a spider web.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Especially with the sunlight through it. That's really when the spider webs pick up that light coming through.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I was like kind of like moving off to the side, seeing if maybe I could change the way my angle to it so I could see the webbing, and there was nothing there.
All right, that one just got a whole lot weirder. I didn't realize you were
Yeah.
that close to it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, so this next one, and again, it's titled "A Man Grunt in the Woods," but who knows what we're dealing with here? Let's talk about this one.
Oh, this one's pretty short. I actually, it was one of those times where we were working an opposite shift from each other, and I just wanted to get out of the house, and my baby needed to take a nap. She naps in the car really easily. And so I drove out, and this was after I had gotten my bow, drove out to the same area, not the same exact area, but the same mountain. I went off on like a logging road where it's not really thick. It's like it's been logged a lot, so the trees are pretty kind of smaller and you can see pretty easily through the forest. Pulled off the side of a road and parked my car, and she was sleeping. Whenever I do this, I'm like, I stay right there because I don't want anything to happen to her. I want to be able to be right near her. I went to set up my target, and I'm walking back to the car, and I hear what sounds like movement out in the woods. And so I'm looking because I can see really well, and I don't see anything. I'm like, okay. And I just kind of stand there for a minute, like trying to get a sense, the feel of what's going on. Like, am I feeling anything? Is this a weird vibe, or am I just reading into it? And so I stood there for a minute, and I hear this deep, like, when, the only thing I can compare it to is when a man has a cold and they do that, like, kind of like deep, like, kind of clearing their throat. I heard that, and I'm like, okay, I'm creeped out. Like, is there a person out here watching me? This is creepy. And so I'm looking around, I don't see anybody, but I did have a creepy, like, there was a vibe that was like, I shouldn't be here, I need to go. And I'm like, never mind. And I went and grabbed the target, loaded it back in the car, turned around and left. And so that was it. I didn't really explore very much because I was by myself.
Yeah, that was 100% the proper move there. No matter
Yeah.
who or what that was, you got you and your daughter, you guys are by yourselves. Time to go. That is super creepy.
Yeah. I didn't want to find out if it was a person or something else. It was time to get.
Oh, yeah, that one also gave me the heebie-jeebies. I don't like that at all. Because it easily could have been just some creeper in the woods, and that sometimes that can just flat out be the worst case scenario. Let's just be honest.
Yeah,
People are horrifying.
exactly. Yeah. Like I said, I get more creeped out thinking there's a person in the woods than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, for the most part, Bigfoot's pretty benign. They're also creepers, but in a better way where they won't actually usually come in and haul you away for whatever purposes that we don't need to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's circumstances that I've heard where things happen, but typically, like, I don't feel threatened, I guess I should say.
Right. Yeah, but your mom instincts kicked in there and your self-preservation instincts as well. And you're like, nope, target with me. Let's go.
Yeah, yeah.
I wonder though if your boyfriend would have just happened to have gone out there, and you won't know the answer to this, but it's just conjecture. I wonder if that clearing of the throat would have even occurred if he had been there.
Right? I'm not sure. And that's why it's like I said, like some things seems like it waits until I'm by myself for the noises to happen or anything like that. And so sometimes I wonder if whatever it is that's out there is kind of waiting for us to be separated.
There's a knowing to that that's extremely creepy.
Yeah.
And also, if whoever or whatever it was, because we don't know, I also am wondering if they wanted to watch longer, they would have just zipped it up and not, maybe they just had that tickle. They had to clear the throat. But, right? Like if they were quiet, you would have gone on about your business and target practice on.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing that we've noticed is it's almost like these things sometimes want us to know that they're there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wonder if okay, so, going off that vein, then it's just wanting to see, is she going to stay? Is she going to go? What's she going to do? Yeah, it was,
What you doing?
yeah. No, you made the right choice, so, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
So screw you, creepy thing in the woods.
Exactly.
Creepy dude, whoever, whatever. Okay, so this next part, of course, right up my alley, because it's one of the very few things I've seen with my own eyeballs, and that is orbs.
Yes. So another driving out in the woods in the night, because we did this pretty frequently for a while to try and get our baby to take a nap because we were at the end of all of our options at some points. And plus it was nice to get out of the house. So we were driving through down one of the roads. This place has a lot of different roads, and so we'll kind of go down one road and explore and go another road, and they kind of all connect. And they end up going to different places that are like one of the roads ended up connecting over to the coastal area. And we're like, whoa, okay. But anyway, we were driving back and I'm just staring out the window. Like I think my baby had fallen asleep. So I had my hand on her chest still. And I'm just looking out the window, looking at the tree line in the dark. I see what I thought was headlights because sometimes the tree line will be there right next to the road, and then beyond that sometimes there's like a road that's like parallel off in the distance. Like it seemed like it was far away, as sometimes you can see like if someone has a fire going or something like that, you'll see it through the trees. And that's kind of what it looked like, was headlights through the trees pretty far off in the distance because they were small, or that's what my brain kind of made sense of it. And so we're driving and I see that and I didn't really say anything. I'm just like, huh, like trying to look through the trees, trying to see, where these headlights are. And then I see the two lights become one. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe like I'm still trying to rationalize in my head, maybe this car turned and I'm seeing the two lights look like one. Keep driving. And I'm like, that's strange. And I tell my boyfriend, because he's driving, I'm like, hey, wait a second. Let's back up for a second. And I realize these lights are going the same speed as us right next to us. And it's almost like it's following us. Right as I say that, I see this light, like, it's really strange. It lights up brighter. It's like it gets really bright and I can see it lights up all the trees around it all of a sudden. Like it has a burst of light and it gets brighter and lights up the trees in the area around it. And that's when I realized, like, that's not a car. And I'm like, "Do you see that?" And he's like, "Oh my God, I do." Like he saw it at that point towards the end. We kind of stopped the car and they're still there, but it had turned into the two lights again. And then it just slowly dimmed away and it wasn't there anymore. I still was convinced, like, maybe there's a road over there that I just didn't, like, maybe this car is driving down the road, turned into some trees, and I couldn't see it anymore. So we came back the next day and went through the same area. And it turns out that there is a hillside. It's on a hill. This road is on a hill. So there is no road parallel to it. It's just a drop off. Like there's no way there could be lights anywhere nearby, even across like the valley to the other side of the mountain. It wouldn't look like that. And then I started to realize like those lights were in the trees, like going along the car.
Yeah, that whole power up. I mean, besides it going from 2 to 1, this whole powering up and then powering down and going back into 2, that is pretty
Yeah.
dang cool. And I bet when you figured out there was no way that it could have been headlights, you're going, oh, scheisse, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I convinced myself, like, oh, it must have been a car. But then, like, obviously, as we were driving home that night, I'm like, that doesn't make sense. And I kept thinking, like, that doesn't make sense that that would look that way. And I'm like, we have to go back. And so, yeah, when we went back and saw that it wasn't possible, it really solidified everything for me. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Like, how did we see orbs? Like, how do we see those lights? That's so weird.
Not that you'll probably remember this, but do you remember anything special about that evening? Were you guys arguing? Were you extra happy on the other end of the spectrum? Were you talking about, all the strange things that you've seen in these areas? Or do you remember anything like that?
Yeah, it was, and typically we've noticed too regarding that, we we weren't it wasn't we didn't go in expecting anything. We weren't looking for anything to happen. We just kind of went for a drive and just to like enjoy getting out of the house and trying to get our kid to go to sleep. We've noticed that when we kind of go into these situations with more of an open mind, where we're not really expecting anything and we're just out for the fun of it, that's when things tend to happen.
Well, yeah, that and you lose your favorite plug. That's not very nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, give that
And then
back,
arrow,
damn
dang
it.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, then brand new arrow set that you guys just got. You're like, come on.
Yeah.
Oh, because this is cool because you guys do go hunting sometimes, right? So you go bow hunting?
So this was the first time we had just got the bow. We haven't done any hunting before. We were going to go hunting this year, and I missed the deadline for getting tags, so we didn't get to go.
That's pretty cool though, Kari. I mean,
We were trying to.
bow hunting. That's no joke.
Yeah.
All right, so let's keep talking about orbs, but now these are you call them Kyle's orbs because he's had his own experiences as well.
Yeah. So not long after that, actually, because after that happened, we're like, oh, we got to do this again. Like, we got to see this again. This is some strange stuff because it was like, at that point, it seemed like almost every time we would go out, something strange was happening. And so we're like, well, let's go again. Let's see what happens. And so we were driving out and he decided to pull over. He's like, I'm going to do some wood knocks. I'm like, okay, I'm here with the kid. It's fine. You can go do your wood knocks. And I remember thinking in my head, I'm like, let's see if this works. And in my head, I'm like, all right, we're here to say hi. We just want to let you know, like, we're just visiting. Can you show him the same thing that you showed me? Show him something strange so he knows that I'm not crazy. And he does the wood knock. And I wasn't really paying attention. I think I was like feeding our baby. Unfortunately, this was at night, so it was dark out. He's doing his thing. I'm not paying attention. And then he rushes back to the truck. I had the door open. He's like, shut the door, shut the door. And he gets back in the truck and he's like, oh my God. he's like, there's something over there. It's watching me. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, there's something up on that hillside, like eye shine or something. It's like a blue eye shine. I'm like, blue eye shine? I've never heard of that. And I was like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, there's like two eyes looking at me, and it looked like it turned its head because it became one, and then it must have turned back and was looking at me again. And I said, did you feel like it was watching you? He's like, yeah. He's like, I feel like it's watching me. And I'm like trying to look, and I can kind of see in the area he's like, he at that point had taken his headlights and was trying to like get the eye shine to happen, or what he thought was eye shine to happen again. And I kind of see like just this faint, the only way, the color that I can describe it as is like when you have almost like a sun flare, where it's like it's translucent, but it was like a teal blue kind of color, like a green blue kind of color, and it was just barely there, and then it was not there anymore. I'm like, oh, I kind of saw that. And I'm like, but that didn't look like eye shine. Like, I don't think that was eye shine. He's like, I don't know, but it's really creepy. And he was really creeped out about it. So we're talking about it later on. I'm like, I don't think that was eye shine. Like, I don't think there's animals that put out that color of an eye shine. Because he when he did the wood knock, he had a headlamp on. I should have said that. He had a headlamp on, and that's why he thought it was just shining back at him. And it was pretty high up on like this hillside area. It was really overgrown. And yeah.
Was it far away?
Probably about 40 yards away.
Of course, the kicker is that you asked. You asked for that.
Yeah, that's the part. I laughed and I was like, ah. I'm like, that's not eye shine. I'm like, I literally, like, when you were getting out of the truck, I was thinking to myself, or I was thinking, like, kind of putting it out there, like, if you're here, let him know, show him something like you showed me. And then that happened.
Now, I'm not saying this 100% isn't Bigfoot. It could be, right? Like you said, the eye shine
Yeah.
thing in this case is a little strange. It's not the go-to for a Bigfoot. It could be. We're not saying it's not. However,
Yeah.
this is something for everyone to note, that when you go out and you're knocking on a tree or whatever in the woods, you might be communicating with puckwudgies or fey elementals. Like, you just don't
Yeah.
know what you are communicating with. And as you mentioned earlier, with these different wood knock situations that you've already had, who knows what's really making that sound?
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to say. Sometimes it's like, I think we've kind of just accepted that there is a lot out there that we don't understand. And there's a lot about our existence and this world that maybe we just don't know about yet.
Yeah, and I love it where it's most of these stories that you're sharing, you're kind of, I mean, each time you are trying to debunk your own experiences, which I truly do appreciate, especially when you're like, okay, it looks like headlights. Where's the road? Let me look it
Yeah.
up. And you're like, there's no road. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
I love these stories.
Yeah, we were just trying to figure it out because it's most of the time it just doesn't make any sense. And so we're trying to make sense of what's happened.
Now, with him rushing back to the car and going, shut the door, shut the door, shut the door, did he expand upon, did he get some kind of a mortal danger feeling or creeped out feeling?
Yeah.
Did he expand on that?
Yeah, I asked him that. I'm like, so what, you feel like it's an animal that was watching you? Because I was like, okay, it's eye shine. Let's say it's eye shine. I'm like, why do you know that it's eye shine? He's like, I don't know. It felt like it was looking at me, and it didn't like the way it made me feel. Like I think he even said it made the hair on his back stand up. He's like, there's the feeling that I got that I need to get out of there. Because he was freaked out. He got back in the truck. He's like, shut the door, and he locks the doors real quick.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So he felt like it could have been this, whatever it was, that could have closed the 40-yard distance quickly, obviously, because he's rushing back and locking doors in the car.
Yeah, because what he explained was that these lights, or this eye shine was really far apart and pretty high up. And then I was like, we were discussing it. I'm like, okay, so let's talk about this. Like, if it's a deer, that doesn't make sense. They'd be closer together. If it's a larger animal, like a cat that might be watching, again, and he said they were really far apart. Like from his distance, they were far apart. So like, I would think if you were up close to it, it would be even more so.
Poor Kyle. That one's actually probably, I bet that one freaked him out pretty bad, actually.
It did. We again went back and he's like, there's no way. Like we went back to the same spot and he's like, there's no game trail. There's no way. He's like, it's all overgrown. It's kind of like on the side of the road where you could see they dug into the mountainside, like the hillside. And so, I mean, there's obviously sometimes trails that go up that way, but there was nothing. It wasn't worn down or anything. Like animals go through there frequently. So it didn't make any sense that there would be an animal sitting there watching us.
And again, you won't know the answer to this, but I'm just wondering because this has the layer of you asked if subconsciously, like, if you're out there, show us a sign. So there's that element. The next element is he gets out, does a wood knock. And third element, maybe you could put in there, is his headlamp, right? So yeah. I'm just wondering if any one of those three things got taken out of the equation, would the same outcome have happened, especially with the very first element of you asking for it.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder that too. Like, was it from me subconsciously saying like, hey, we're here, just want to say hi, let us know, give him a sign? I don't know.
And I'm not trying to make you jump ahead if in fact there is this element to it. Why now there's my word for ITF, whatever number this is. Element. I've said element now like 5 times. Damn it. You have this asking situation and it works. So do you now consciously after this go, let me try this again and see if it works, and then it ends up working? And if it does, just say, oh yeah, that's coming up. And if not, then that's fine too.
Yeah. There have been times where I've tried it again and it did happen one other time actually, and I don't remember like the timeline where it fell within those orbs. I think it might have even been before he had seen those orbs, or maybe after. I can't remember. There's so much stuff that's happened that it's hard to kind of piece it together. But yes, there has been other moments or another time where I kind of was thinking like, all right, like anything out there, let us know. And yeah. And that time it was he had pulled over to go pee again, nighttime. I think I was feeding our baby, and I see like a flash of light kind of in my peripheral vision. And not long after that, he's quick stepping it back to the car, not quite as fast, not like he's really freaked out, but like, oh my gosh, this is weird. Gets back in the car, he shuts the door real quick, and he's like, I don't know what just happened. I'm like, what? And he goes, let's go and pee. I look up at the moon and I see a star, but the star moves across the moon. And he's like, and then I hear, there was snow on the ground at that point. He's like, I hear the sound of someone taking a single step in the snow. And he's like, I got out of there really quick because I don't know what it was. And that was after I kind of thought, like, I think right before I saw the peripheral, like the flash off to the side, I was thinking like, all right, if he's out there, let him know. If you're out there, give him a sign. And then that had happened.
Yeah, the star across the moon. I mean, I was kind of thinking about that when you brought up in that orb situation where you asked for it and then it occurred. You know, that goes along with the whole CE5 intention and consciousness thing, right? Like you go out and you wait for after asking for these things to do this power up thing, and you can quote unquote communicate, you know, with them via these ones for yes, two for no kind of a deal.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't poo poo on anybody. If they want to, if it works for them, hell yes. I wish I was gifted or sensitive in that way at least a little bit, and it sounds like you are, Kari. So I don't know. I would hazard to say you might be successful at something like CE5.
Yeah, I don't know. And that's kind of like my point of view before all this stuff started happening was like, ah, that's crazy. Like, okay, sure. But then the stuff started happening. I'm like, man, anything is possible. It really feels like anything is possible. And that's when I was like more open to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why your opening for all of these encounters is so unique to me, because normally it's, as I said, not to repeat myself too much, but passed down through family, or I've had these experiences since I was a kid,
Yeah.
and it's not the case, which in a way is even, it adds another interesting layer to things.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard that the women in my family do have not really, I mean, I don't know if it's been accepted or not, but kind of psychic like abilities.
Oh.
And I don't know, the only thing I can reference is like my mother. She seems to know everything before I tell her, but that's because she's my mom. It seems like there's a connection, between your mother and child. But I have spoken to another woman in our family who's talked to other women, and there's been a long history of like mental health problems and what she thinks was more psychic abilities that were just seen as more mental health problems.
Mm.
So it's hard to say if that's, again, if that's actually legitimate or if that's just, I guess.
Well, and see, that's a very fine line, and that adds to the whole thing where of people don't want to talk about this stuff because, yeah, some people just look at you like you're nuts.
Exactly, yeah.
It's a real
Like
fine
most of
line.
this stuff that I've told you, we don't really talk to anybody about it because if we ever bring it up, they kind of look at us like, oh, okay.
Right. Like, oh, you're cute. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Bigfoot,
Yeah,
okay.
no. Don't invite them to the next barbecue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. Believe me. All right, so let's talk about this ghost moan.
Oh, so that was another time. We were just wandering around doing wood knocks. It was nighttime. I think we had pulled over and he was doing a wood knock off to the side of the car. And I was in the car again because at this point, like we had our kid, I stay in the car with her mostly. So he gets out and does stuff. And so I think it was summertime. So I had the window down. I'm like trying to listen, like, do I hear anything? And she's sleeping next to me. And I'm like trying to hear. And he does this wood knock. And I hear this like ghostly, like, ooh. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, what was that? And he's like, was that her? He thought it was our kid crying, making like a little bit of a sound. And I'm like, no, she's asleep. That came off into the woods. And I pointed over to the area I heard it from. And he's like, that's strange. Like, we wanted to investigate, but we also kind of got that vibe that it was like, maybe we shouldn't look into this one. Like, it was a little bit of a creepy vibe. Like, something was like trying to lure us off into the woods.
Now, how far is this really tough with sounds, but how far away did that one sound?
Well, it didn't sound super far away, but it wasn't very close. That in the middle. It was like maybe 60 yards, 40 to 60 yards.
That one, when I read it, it reminded me of in Beetlejuice when Adam and Barbara are they got the sheets on and they're trying to scare Delia. Ooh. And
Yeah.
she's like, try harder, please. Can't you do better than this?
That's totally what it sounded like. I'm like, that sounded like a ghost or something.
Okay, but this one, and everybody, take the mental stock of what we've already talked about. This one plus the next one, really, these kind of go together, and it goes back to this whole trickster in the woods, the poltergeist in the woods, the mimic situation, and I
Hmm.
mean, this one too, super creepy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so, oh, and I forgot to mention too, after he saw those orbs that night, or what he thought was eye shine, we went to leave, and there was so we literally go to leave. He's turned around. We're going down the road, and he sees what looks to him like a truck, 2 headlights with a light bar. So like 2 lights and a bar coming towards us. This is what he said he saw, because I didn't see it. And he just pulls over, like, to get out of the way. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's quiet for a second. I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, there's a car coming. I'm like, there's no car coming. And he's like, there was a car coming though. And then almost as soon as he says that, this truck comes around the corner that has a light bar on and sees our headlights, turns their light bar off, and just passes by us.
Mm.
And I'm like, well, that's strange. I'm like, what did you see that truck or something? He's like, no, because it was around a corner. We couldn't see, obviously, around that corner from where we were. And it's almost as if he saw it before it happened.
That's weird.
Yeah. And so he pulled over thinking he needed to get out of the way when there was nothing there. And then the truck shows up.
See, and this goes back to something you've mentioned a couple times now. Like, it's tailored to each one of you. Each one of these experiences they're all very different, really, but they're tailored to each one of you, and for what purpose?
Exactly. That's the thing, is it's almost like it's very rare that both of us experience something at the same time.
Yeah. So this next one, and as I said, this goes along with, again, what is this mimic trickster situation? Let's talk about this deep breath sound and what happened after the breath in the woods.
Oh my gosh. So we went out to the snow to play in this area that we've been to this area before. We've heard wood knocks in that area before. And like I said, like, things happen. So we're just kind of like, oh, whatever. Not that big of a deal. It's kind of normal. But we weren't expecting anything. This was the middle of the day. We were taking our kid out to go in the snow. There wasn't many people. There was nobody out there that we saw up that far because it was pretty snowy. And so it was kind of difficult to get to. But this area kind of gives me the creeps. Whenever something happens there, it feels a little more aggressive. This was the place that I was talking about earlier, where it's like, I don't really like this spot very much. But anyway, we've pulled over. We're out playing in the snow. We're just hanging out, playing in the snow with our dog, throwing like snowballs to get our dog to chase after it. Our baby's walking around. She's kind of 3 or 4 feet away from me. And it just suddenly gets very still and very quiet. And that tends to happen right before something happens when we're out there. And I go, this doesn't feel right. And I'm like, I turn to Kyle and I'm like, do you feel that? I'm like, this feels strange. And I went over and I picked her up because I didn't like that feeling. And almost right after I picked her up, kind of across from us, we hear what only sounds like, it sounds like someone took a very deep breath and just as loud as they possibly could yelled out from the middle of the woods. Just, oh. And I'm like, oh my God. And it sounded aggressive. And then maybe 10 seconds later, it did it again. And I'm like, okay, this feels a little scary. Like, I don't really like this feeling. And I go, what the heck is that? And he's like, huh. And at the end of the second one, it kind of sounded like an owl hoot. And he's like, maybe it's an owl. It must be an owl. And then after he says that, it does it again. And it sounds more like an owl hoot. And at that point, I pulled my phone out. I'm like, let's see if it keeps going. I'm like, all right, is it going to do it again? And it does it one more time. But this time, it literally sounded like an owl. It sounded like there was an owl in the forest just making a really loud hoot. They go, hoo-hoo. And we both were like, that's strange, because it sounded like a person yelling from the middle of the forest. And then it morphed into the sound of an owl. And that happens too sometimes. Like, we've heard things where it's almost like it blends into the environmental sounds. Like, it'll sound one way and then it ends up sounding more like what's normally heard in that area, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
but we laughed after that.
I don't blame you a bit. I mean, and see, this again, goes right back to, if it can do the owl spot on, why it chose then to take a deep breath, sound like a dude, and then kind of end in an owl the second time. And then the third, the fourth, it's getting more into a classic owl where you maybe wouldn't be able to tell. But at the very first, you sure as heck fire could tell it wasn't no damn owl.
Yeah, at first I thought someone was screwing with us. I thought there was someone, but I'm like, there's nobody around. There's no trucks anywhere. Like, nobody's around here. So how would some random person be out in the middle of the woods over there making these noises at us to try and freak us out? And why? Like, people around here, that's not something that crosses their mind, I think. I don't think they think that way, like, to go and try and make, quote, like, Bigfoot sounds or whatever. It's not something someone around here would do anyway.
Well, and the other thing that you mentioned in the email that I wanted to bring up is that, so you say it got really quiet and you knew instantly something ain't right. Let me go get my daughter, pick her up. But
Yeah.
also you said your dog stopped doing what he was doing.
Yes. He was just playing around in the snow, and he stopped and he was looking over there. And he kept looking over there. And like, we're like, like it felt strange to us. And obviously he felt something too. And it's almost like he could sense that something was over there. Like, we didn't have him on a leash. And I actually got worried. I was thinking he was going to take off and run that way. And I even said to Kyle, my boyfriend, I'm like, maybe you should grab him because he's really interested in something over there. And I'm a little creeped out right now.
And then the horrible sounds started.
Yeah. And then we heard the sounds.
And that was the direction that he was staring. The dog.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's so much nope right there when you're out there in the woods. I'm sorry. Because you cannot fake, and a dog is not going to fake something like that. That is legit.
No.
They are the best barometers that there are for the paranormal or anything, or just some creepy ass random dude rando in the woods where you're going, I wish I had a very large gun right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so much nope. Now, have you guys gone back to that exact particular area for any reason since then?
We did. So we went back there at night one time, actually pretty recently. I think we were just bored and wanted to go for a drive. And that too, like, at first, when this all started happening, the strange thing is, like, we kind of just had the urge to go out there. It's not like we were like planning anything. It's like it'd be nighttime. We're like, hey, you want to go for a drive? Yeah, where do you want to go? Okay, let's go this way. And like, we kind of just, it's not on purpose. We just have a feeling that we should go out there. And that part was kind of tripping me out a little bit for a while too. And now that I know all these things happen out there, it's like, how much of it is the feeling like we should just go out there, and how much of it is it all this stuff happens and I kind of want to see if something happens.
Right. But also you mentioned that this area is where you have in fact found some strange structures in the woods.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, so yes, we went back out there again at night and had heard some wood knocking. And Kyle got out of the car, was doing his wood knocking. I was in the car still. I had the window down, and he was hearing knocking kind of straight across from us. And I was hearing knocking and movement off to the left of us. And I kept hearing this movement, and it sounded like it kept getting closer. And he said he actually got pretty freaked out. He's like, my hair stood up there. And he got back in the car. And he's like, let's go. I said, I want to go. I don't feel good here. But we went back during the daytime because all these things seemed to happen there, kind of coming from this wooded area off where we heard the noise come from. And I'm like, let's go check it out. Like, let's go look over there and see what it is. And so we walked in there during the day. We were looking around, and it's really worn down. Like, there's a lot of like dead foliage and stuff all around the area, and it's all flattened down. Like, it gets a lot of activity over there. And I actually stepped right next to, we think, a yellow jacket hole, and I didn't know it. because I look down and I see this, what looked to me like a bee next to a hole, and I'm like, oh, I need to get out of here. And I start to like kind of get out of that area, and I start feeling stinging all over me. And I'm like, there's a bunch of bees on me, I guess. I got stung like 5 times that day.
Ouch.
Yeah, but anyway, I after that happened, I was like, I don't want to be in here. And I don't know if it was just the bee stings or the yellow jacket stings, or if it was the feeling that was there, but I just didn't, it was almost this feeling like you, when you walk into someone else's house and they're not home, you feel like you're not supposed to be there. But we were looking around, and like there's a bunch of branches and like bushes and stuff that are kind of like intertwined with each other. And like there was even some that had been like pulled out of the ground, kind of arched into another other tree branches and stuff, and like stuck into the ground. Like it didn't naturally look like it did that. There was a lot of it that looked like it naturally happened, but there was also a lot of it that didn't really make sense. It was like twisted up as if someone or something went and purposely did it.
How traveled are these areas, Kari? Are there, I mean, you guys go out there for target practice and hiking, and, you know,
Yeah.
how traveled are these by other folks?
That area, so that whole area, that whole mountain is pretty well traveled. And that's why it's like, how much of it is something weird, supernatural, and how much of it is a person, it's hard to say. Like even that area that I'm talking about, it's like there does seem to be a lot of traffic, a lot of human traffic in there too. So it's really hard to say if it's like if it's a person or not. But it was, so there's like a tree line, and it looks thick. It looks really dense and thick from the road, like bushes and trees just blocking your view. You can't see in at all. But then we found a little, like a trail in there, like a game trail or something. We walked in there, and it was all open like that. It was all kind of trampled down and branches all twisted up and stuff.
I mean, it could be people, right? But when you take
Exactly.
into account all the other strange things that have already happened, it's at least noteworthy.
It is, yeah. Just the fact that we had heard it over there and the feeling that we got over there, it's a different vibe from like where we lost the arrow and stuff, where we saw the leaf, heard the sounds. That's more of like something's there watching us, but it feels welcoming. Well, not welcoming, but like it doesn't feel scary. Where this area, even though we haven't had as much happen there, there is a feeling of like, I don't like being there. It makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, then you're getting into the very scary area of I walk down that path, and even though there's someone right behind me, I'm going to become like missing 411 style.
Right? Exactly.
And you just walk into another dimension or something. I mean, who knows if that's what's going on, but
However,
there's some weird stuff going down out in the woods. And
uh-huh.
all of these, I love your encounters because it goes to show if you want to look at it from the lens, for the most part, not every one of these encounters, but through the lens of straight flesh and blood Bigfoot, you can do that. You could put on your Bigfoot glasses and say, wood knocks from a Bigfoot. He's smashing a
Yeah.
tree with a big old stick. But or you could go the Fae, the elemental, the mimic situation, the others very easily too, for any or all, or maybe it's both.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of have a theory that because so much has happened just in that general area, it's like, is this a dimensional thing? Like, are there different dimensions and it's just like, it's thin there? And so these things are able to be more interactive? I don't know. Because it's such a mixture of different things that have happened.
And this does not automatically make a portal area or a thin area, as you rightfully said. But
Hmm.
is there a lot of water around there?
There's creeks. The area that I get creeped out at actually has like a helipond. So there is like a little pond there that's man-made.
Is that
But
part
there,
in the video? Because you guys were near a body of water in one of the videos, weren't you?
oh yeah, that was up near Bend.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and like I said, it's not always 100%. Oh, there's water, so it's a it's a thin area. No, it's not the case. But I just wanted to get kind of a snapshot of that. If there's any elements of water. There I go, saying elements again. Okay.
That's okay.
So then,
There is though, actually, now that I think about it, the area that we go to where a lot of things happen that I was talking about in the beginning,
mm-hmm.
there is a creek like down the way. And then the triangle area, like I said, there's a hella pond right there. The area where we heard the moan, like the ghost moan kind of sound, there's a small pond off kind of down a road off to the side, like around the area that we heard it coming from. So it does kind of seem like water does play a part in it.
And, it's not always, again, it's not always a blanket statement, but there's the thought that especially moving water, so even a small creek would have quite a bit of quote unquote paranormal energy, right? I mean, one of my favorite / most horrifying 411 stories is the one where don't remember his age, not going to say even a guess. I don't know if he's young or old. The man or the boy or the whoever goes out and he is found dead at the base of a tree when his backpack full of emergency supplies is sitting on top of a boulder with, the flowing water going around the boulder. What the actual hell is that? That's one of the creepiest ones, I think, out of all of them, besides like the cave with the bolts and the grandma. That sucks too.
Yeah.
But that one has always stuck out in my mind because you're going, what did he climb on the boat? You know what I mean? Like you're going, how, why, who, what the actual hell is going on there? Yeah. So thank you for clarifying about the water because that does come up quite a bit when you talk about this stuff, as you know. So, okay. So the next thing we're going to go to is it's an area near the area that we just talked about, but it's more target practicing with your bows, right?
Yeah. So this area was kind of I think it was what I was referencing before, where we had pulled over and he got out of the car to go pee. There's like a kind of a bank down to a dried up creek area where there's some buckets down there. And I'm like, oh, what is that? I'm like, there's buckets down there. What is that? And he's like, I don't know. Let me go find out. And like, well, before that, we get out of the car and we're kind of talking to each other and we were hearing the wood knocks around us. And it sounded like we heard like one wood knock and then another one off to one side. And it ended up being like 4 or 5 wood knocks that sounded like they were surrounding us and getting fairly close. Like they sounded pretty close, but we didn't see anything. And we're looking around for like woodpeckers or something like that that could be making that noise, but they were single wood knocks. It wasn't a woodpecker like quick knocking. But anyway, he's like sees the buckets down there, and I think I had gotten back in the car. Yeah, I had gotten back in the car to because our baby had woken up at that point. So I got back in the car to be with her, and he went down the hill down to this dried up creek area to see what was in these buckets, which ended up just being mud. But I'm like, you might find some dead body parts or something. That's not a good idea. But he went down there, and I get out of the car with her, and he's down there, and I smell like human poo. I'm like, this stinks over here. And I see that he's opened the buckets up. I'm like, maybe the buckets were full of it and I can, like, there's a wind or something, a breeze, and I can smell it. I kind of smell it, and then I'm like, huh. And I yelled down to him, like, did you go to the bathroom down there? Like, what am I smelling right now? And he comes back up and I don't smell it anymore. And I'm like, was there like waste in that or something? And he's like, no, it looked like it was just full of mud. I'm like, that's strange. And then I realized, like, I don't smell it anymore. So it's almost like I got out of the car and something was nearby to where it smelled like human poo. And then it wasn't there anymore once he came back up towards me. And so we couldn't explain that either. And the knocking had stopped at that point too.
How far away is this area from the area that we've been mostly covering?
So the area that we were mostly covering is like a mountain. It's like down on, if you were to go down the mountain, kind of like through a valley, a road that goes through that valley area up on the other side of the mountain. So it's not the same mountain, it's like the mountain next to it.
This is the part where my brain really kind of goes off of Bigfoot for all of you guys' experiences, because now it's like it's the Bigfoot somehow knew you guys were going to be over here, and now they're over here doing wood knocks. I highly doubt that. And what does Kyle especially like to do? He likes to go out and thump on trees to elicit responses. And the second you get out of the dang car, boom, you got wood knocking going on and a strange smell. This one totally knocked the whole classic flesh and blood Bigfoot thing off of the pedestal for me.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And there's things like that where it's like, okay, that seems like a Bigfoot type of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Not this one.
It was strange.
Not this one, because it's not in the same area. At least then you were kind of going back to the same area. And, you know, I would hazard to say that Bigfoot are highly intelligent creatures, and you might not be wearing the same thing every time. But I would, especially since you guys are going out there with a little one, and I would imagine that a Bigfoot or big feetses can recognize faces, and they're very intelligent. There's that family there, and this person over here that continually walks this trail. You get where I'm going. But I will say,
like it recognizes whatever's there.
Yeah, but the problem is, for the classic Bigfoot situation, it just doesn't fit with you guys randomly now going to this other target practice area, and then they happen to find you and know, hey, there's our woodknock buddies. I doubt that.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
I doubt that, unless there's that many in the area. Or, hey, I mean, listen, I could be totally wrong. Could be a Bigfoot family group. They just happen to be in that area. You guys show up and they're knocking because they're pissed there's anybody there. Not just you, just anybody. I mean, it could be. I'm just saying, for me, this is where it turns back into some type of an elemental, fae, others situation of the woods.
Yeah, it's hard to say. And in that same area, there was, I don't even think I mentioned this in my email with you, but there was another point where we were driving along the road, going back towards the main road in that same like mountain area. We hear what sounds like someone, because it's like a person, like a two-legged thing walking through brush off the side of the car. I'm like, hey, hang on a second. We stop the car, and you can hear it moving like further away from us, like it's working its way through this area. And so Kyle was driving, he backs the car up, and we can hear it. And then we hear the sound of like, so there's like these tunnels that are underneath the road that kind of redirect the water. Like if there's water coming down the mountain, it'll redirect it kind of and splash it out the side. If that makes sense. Like there's like a hill right there.
Mm-hmm.
And you can hear the water splashing out of this tube. And it sounds just like the thing that was walking through the woods. The way the sound of it wasn't a continuous stream. It was a splash, splash, splash.
Mm.
And I'm like, did we hear that? But that didn't make sense because we had backed up to that water area. And it's almost like whatever it was that was making that noise then began to mimic its steps to match the sound of the water coming out.
Oh, what?
Yeah, because then we heard what sounded like rustling behind the car on the other side of the road, as if something walked through the area down below us, up the side of the hill, across the road, and then started to go up the hill on the other side of the road. And we thought maybe there was two things, because at that point we were hearing the water, but we thought it was still whatever it was that was walking. And then we also hear the rustling off to the side. And I'm like, maybe there's two different things out there. And then we realized, like, no, there was water coming out right here. And then we heard the sound of something moving up behind us on the other side. If that makes sense.
That it does. And can I just say, that is a little bit of awesome and a little bit of nope all rolled into one.
Yeah, it was dark out, but we were in the car, so it's never really that creepy because we feel like we're a little more safe being in the car.
Don't you wonder if yeah, right, like just like when you're in a tent, and really
Yeah.
honestly all you are
It's
is a
just some
big
fabric.
old burrito waiting to be
Yeah.
rolled up and consumed, but hey, I'm the same way. It's just like leaving your feet out at the end of the bed. You got to cover them puppies up.
Yep.
I wonder if there's something either about you or you and Kyle or just Kyle, whatever it is, or I'd just be nice to have somebody else call in and go, hey, what part of Oregon are you guys talking to? And if if you
Yeah,
wanted to, you could be like, all right, it's this area. And they go, oh my God, I have the same experiences out there too. I just wonder if it's something
exactly.
about you guys or you, or if there are a bunch of other people that are like, man, I got a laundry list out in that area. That's crazy. I feel
Hmm.
nuts. You're not nuts. Like, just reach out and it would be nice to compare notes. So I'm just going to, I was of course going to throw this out there, but it went ahead and happened now. If you guys have any
Yeah,
experiences from Oregon, just reach out, and that way Kari and I and you can compare notes and we can see what's doing and if others are having these experiences out there, because I love these because they are very unique in their own way. They each have their own
mhm,
layer to it. I mean, look at this last one. It's got the wood knocking, but then you also have this smell of poo, and then you're going, well, but then there's the, but it's also strange because there's literally buckets down there with mud in them, whereas you were joking about body parts. That's exactly where my mind would have gone to. I'm like, you don't touch that, you know what's in there. uh but there was just mud, but then there's also this poo smell. Well, why are the buckets there? Who put them there? Where did the poo
mhm,
smell come from and then go? So
yeah.
heavy,
And
heavy
even
trickster.
there's because it's such a regularly like logged area too, they have people, I don't know if they do this in other, I would assume they do this in other logging areas across the country. But anyway, they have people that are watching the area. Like, for example, they'll close off a road and they'll have a camper set up there, and these people actually live there and camp there while they're logging. And so many times I just want to like go up to them and be like, so, you have anything weird happen? Like, you
Right.
hear anything weird? You see anything weird over here? Just to see like if other people are experiencing the same kind of thing.
There has to be. There just has to be. So
Yeah.
Shannon at intothefrayradio.com. Kari reached out, which was awesome. So please, you guys, if you're out in Oregon, just take a shot in the dark. I mean, regardless, you should reach out anyway because we should compare these notes. But hey, maybe she is talking about the very same area that you are having experiences, even if you've only just had one that at all. Just reach out. It's totally worth it. Trust me. I don't scoff because this person has this many and you only have one. Hey, I only have one really, really good one anyway. And then my orb and a couple other little smatterings. There's nothing to be ashamed of there as far as list envy. Okay. So no, that one, yeah, that was a turn for me with your encounters, to be honest with you, Kari. And
Yeah.
I was already leaning kind of away from the biggie stuff, but that one was like, okay, that's a whole nother level. All right,
Yeah.
so last but not least, let's talk about your birthday time and what went down around then.
So this was the breaking point for me to reach out to you. Like I said, we were gonna go hunting, but I didn't get tags in time. I had already requested time off from work and I didn't want to waste it. So I'm like, all right, let's go camping. But it was started to get cold. This was the end of September. So it started to get cold out. And I'm like, I really don't want to go camping. We don't have a trailer or anything. It would be tent camping. And especially with our kid, it's like things change when you have a kid. You don't really want to do that kind of stuff so much anymore. So anyway, we finally decided like we're going to be adults and actually get like a hotel. So we were based in Bend. We were staying in Bend, and then the hiking areas in that region, you have to actually get a pass to hike there because they don't want it being overrun with too many people. So it's like up until October 15th, you have to have a pass in order to hike certain trails. And so I had planned ahead of time. I got a pass for two different trails. one of them, well, I'll just say what it was. One of them was a Benson Tina's trail. And the other one, I can't remember what the other one was. We didn't end up doing the other hike because it was cold and it was really rainy that weekend. And so anyway, we got up that day. It was actually a pretty rough night. Like, our baby didn't sleep very well because it wasn't familiar to her. And so we didn't get much sleep. And so we're like, oh, well, we're here. We've got this reserved permit to go and do this. Like, let's go do this. We went and got a little bit more warm weather stuff because we didn't come as prepared as we should have. And so it took us a while to get out there. And by the time we got out there to this trailhead, it was like really raining. It was raining pretty hard all day. It was drizzly, wet, rainy, really pretty cold. And we get to the trailhead and there's no other cars there. Like none. It's deserted. We're the only one there. And we're like, well, this is kind of nice, but it's really cold. She had just fallen asleep, of course, as soon as we got there. And so she was pissed when we got there. And she's screaming her head off. Like, she's a pretty easygoing kid, but she screamed so hard that the next day her voice was hoarse sounding, as if she had kind of lost her voice from screaming so much. We got all situated, got her in her carrier, and she had kind of calmed down. She wasn't screaming anymore, but she still looked ticked off that she was having to do this. But I was like, no, we're doing it. Like, I know that it's cold. I know that it's wet. We probably should just turn around and go back because things aren't going quite right, but whatever, we're going to do it. And so we get situated, we get going. We're walking down the trail and we get to the lake, the first lake. There's two lakes. The first one is closer, obviously. We get there and sat down to rest. Like, there was some tree coverage, and so it was kind of dry right there. I sat down and we took our kid and we had her in her little carrier, and it's one of those ones with a frame that you can actually have her sit in it on the ground. And so she's sitting there next to me, and my boyfriend takes our dog and kind of goes to explore along the shoreline off to the left of us. And he just kind of, I can still see him. He doesn't ever go out of eyesight, but he goes some ways away. I feel and I hear underneath my feet the sound of knocking, like a kind of a quick knock. And what I was imagining is maybe there's a rodent in the ground that's like chewing on a root, and the root is knocking on a rock or something like that. And it just keeps happening, and I'm like, that's really strange. I've never heard that before or felt that before. But whatever. He starts to make his way back along the shoreline towards us, and the knocking stops. And I'm like, huh, weird. And so he gets back over to us, and I go, I just heard knocking. Like, I felt knocking. I heard knocking underneath my feet, as if like the roots were being knocked on or something. And he goes, oh, really? And of course he like knocks on the tree, and we sit and listen, and nothing else happens. And it doesn't happen again. The whole time we're sitting there, it doesn't happen again. And we're kind of getting ready to get back on the trail again to get further down towards, just to see, because there was a second lake. We knew it was getting a little later in the day. It was still really cold and rainy. And we're like, well, let's just see. Let's walk a little further and see how far we want to go. And we can turn around and come back. It's not a big deal. We don't have to go to the second lake because of the way that it is that day. And our kid had kind of had it. She didn't really want to be there. She wasn't crying or anything like that, but the look on her face was that she didn't want to be doing it anymore. But anyway, so we're getting going, and I'm kind of facing the lake a little more, and he's facing me. And so out of his peripheral vision and out of more of my front vision, but I'm not paying attention, I see low to the ground what I thought was a bird, like a black bird, fly low to the ground along the bank right in front of us, really quickly, right in front of us. And I kind of like caught my eye, and I look over there, and it goes really quick, and then I expect to see it pick up from where the bank is, because it's going to run into the side of the bank, as low as it is. I expect to see it pick up, or like there was like it looked like a little hole in the side of the bank, like from a squirrel or something. And I'm like, did it go into that hole? Like, what happened? Like, I saw it go and then it was just gone. I didn't see it lift up to go fly in a tree. I didn't see it go anywhere else. It just whoop, gone. And I'm like, I didn't hear anything. And then I'm picturing in my head, I'm like, I didn't really even see wings. Like, it looked like the shape of a bird, but it was almost like a shadow. It was so dark. It was like just a quick whoop and then just gone. And I'm like, what? And my boyfriend, he's like, huh? He's like, I saw that. I said, did you see that? That was like a bird, but it didn't go anywhere. He's like, I don't know what that was. He's like, it kind of looked like a bird. It was kind of the shape of a bird, but we didn't see wings. We didn't see feathers. Didn't make any noise. And like I said, I didn't see it go anywhere else. It was just vanished. I'm like, well, that's strange. Okay. Weird. And so we're like, just like everything else, we're like, well, that's about it. We can't really explain it. So we get going back down the trail, and we're going down the trail, and we come to an area and he's walking kind of ahead of me. We're probably about 6 to 8 feet apart from each other because he's in better shape than me. He's like ahead of me, and I hear this whistling, and he's like, do you hear that? And it sounded like a low, like, just like a little whistle. I'm like, I kind of heard that. But again, it's like, is it wind or is it a whistle? And we're like, okay, whatever. So we keep going. And like I said, he's ahead of me, and I hear, again, I wish I could reenact the sound. I can still kind of picture it. I still kind of remember it. But it was this kind of like a call, like a low, like, ooh, off in the distance. And I'm like, what the heck is that? And it gets louder, and it happens again. And I was like, it's hunting season. I don't know this area. There could be somebody out there. We're in the middle of nowhere. Like, this is pretty secluded. There's nobody else out here because there was no one in the parking area. So we know we're pretty much by ourselves unless some creeper is in the woods. And so he's kind of around a corner from me. And I'm like, hey, like, I didn't even try to be quiet. I'm like, hey, get over here. Because I was creeped out thinking there was a person over here somewhere. And he comes over, and I'm like, listen. And it happens again, but this time it sounded further away. Like, as soon as he got closer to me, it sounded like it was like quieter or like further away. I'm like, do you hear that? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, what is that? And he's like, I don't know. So we kind of sat there for a second, and it didn't happen again. And we're like, okay, this is getting a little strange. I'm like, let's maybe not go too much further. We keep going, and we kind of come around a bend, and we're walking along, and it flattens out. And I hear what sounds like, the only thing in my mind to rationalize it was the sound of someone very heavy, wearing very heavy like boots that would be stomping, because you can't really be more flat-footed, stomping, running as fast as they can through the forest towards us. And I stop, and he stops, and he's still ahead of me. And I stop, and we hear this crashing, quick running, heavy running, and I can feel it under my feet running towards us. And I'm freaked out. I'm like, someone is rushing at us right now. And he turns to me. Well, and then, so I hear the running and the branches breaking and stuff being broken and stuff. And then I hear this boom, boom, and we could feel it under our feet. Like, it was so heavy. It was so loud. It was a boom, boom under our feet. And I'm like, what in the hell just happened? I said, what was that? He's like, did you see that? I was like, see what? I'm like, all I heard was something running at us just now. And he's like, there's a person over there. And I was like, what? What do you mean there's a person over there? He's like, there's a person over there. I said, what did you see? He's like, I saw someone running really, really, really fast. dart behind a tree. And he's like, I don't know where they went. There's a person over there. I'm like, we're leaving. I didn't even question it. We didn't stop to investigate. And I'm kind of kicking myself. We're both kicking ourselves for not looking around more. But I'm like, we're getting out of here. And I was freaked out thinking somebody was trying to screw with us. And so we turn around and we walked so quick back to the car. And as we're leaving, we don't carry a weapon with us. But I didn't feel safe. And so I said to him, I'm like, you got your gun, right? And he's like, yeah, it's in my pocket. And I'm like, oh, okay, good. And I was like, and I have satellite service. So if I need to call 911, I will. And so we're like booking it back to the truck. And we get some distance away. We actually make it back to like above the lake area. And this part I actually hadn't said because I wasn't sure. When we go hiking, I wear these Vibram 5-finger type shoes. So it's more like barefoot walking. So I don't leave like a shoe print. So anyway, we get back over just above where the lake is. And I'm keeping an eye out on everything. I actually had picked up a stick. I was carrying like this heavy stick because I was worried something was going to come up on us. I looked down because I have to kind of watch where I'm going when I wear these shoes so I don't step on a rock the wrong way. And I looked down, and so to clarify, when we came back from the lake, we went back on the trail and we went down the trail, not back to the area that we had come from, but down the trail further. So we're walking back from that whole incident above the lake. There's a muddy area, and I see a footprint that looks like a bare foot on the ground, but it's going back down the trail in the direction we're heading. And I'm like, do you see that? And I pointed at it. It wasn't large. It wasn't big. It looked like my foot, but it didn't have any tread to it, as if it was my foot, because those shoes leave a tread, even though it's a barefoot kind of foot mark. But the trail's all muddy, and it literally looked like someone didn't have any shoes on, may have had a foot the same size as mine, and was walking down the trail in the direction we were now heading. And it was a mark in the mud. And I'm like, do you see that? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, huh, that's weird. But part of me was like, well, we didn't come back up this way. Like when we went back, it was past the trail that came up from the lake. So there's no way that it would be my footprint. So it didn't make sense. But all that stuff that had just happened didn't make sense either. So anyway, we're walking down the trail. I finally get to a point where we can hear birds chirping again. And I'm like, okay, let's talk a little bit more about what you heard and what you saw. And he's like, I saw a human shaped thing, like a tan color. And I said, what do you mean? He's like, if you could picture like a Carhartt jacket that's like faded, that kind of a color. And I remember thinking, when we came up on that situation and he said, did you see that? I kind of saw something off the corner of my eye. And this is kind of like what happens at home. We see like little flashes and stuff, and it's like, did we really see that? Did that really just happen? And then kind of write it off. But anyway, I kind of saw what looked like what he described, like a lighter tan color, like a Carhartt jacket type of color that was like faded from the sun. So that lighter color quickly, like the shape of a tree trunk, just dart by, almost as quick as that bird thing that we had seen. Very fast, like a blur. And in the moment, I remember thinking, like, I didn't think anything of it. I thought I just saw something that wasn't really there. And I was so distracted by the sound and freaked out by everything, I didn't take it seriously. But anyway, he's describing to me, once we're back in this area, what he sees. And he said he saw that thing run behind a tree. And he's like, it was so fast, it was a blur. And he said he saw he just saw I think he said he saw like the shape of the arm, as if swinging back and a torso. And I said, did you see any clothing? Like, did you see any details? And he said, no. And again, that's kind of what I saw. It was like a blur, like it was just a color. Didn't see an outline of any clothing. If it was a jacket, I was thinking maybe it's a person wearing, they make those bibs, like Carhartt bibs that are like that color, the whole thing. He's like, no, I didn't see any stitching or anything. He's like, I don't even know that a person could go that fast. And he said he saw it dart behind a tree, and that's when he heard the bump bump. He expected, because it was moving so quickly, he expected it to go past the tree, because it's not possible for a person to run that quickly and just stop on a dime like that. It didn't make any sense. And so he's like, I just thought it was a person. It was the shape of a person. It looked like a person. And he's like, and the only way I know for sure that it even happened was that he said he saw a bush on the ground move as it went past it. So this bush was waving around because something had bumped into it when it ran past it. Get back to the car, and we're like talking it over and stuff, and that was pretty much it. And went back to the hotel, and basically have been talking about it ever since. We went back, actually, I think it was either last weekend or the weekend before, we went back again. And when we went back, it was nice out, and that parking lot was packed. So people go out there all the time. We didn't know because we're not from that area, and the parking lot was packed full of people. And we went back because we're like, we have to see this. Like, we have to know what we saw. And we actually had a difficult time finding the location that we had seen it happen, because we're like, we were in such a rush, such a hurry, and so freaked out to get back to our truck that we didn't really look around. We were like, let's get the heck out of here. But went back to that area, we're looking around, and it's pretty grown. Like, there's like little baby trees all over and foliage, and and in the area that he thinks that he saw that thing run through, there's a bare patch. Like, it's like in the middle of this forested area. It looks like a grassy, bare area. There's no trees growing right there. It's just this open area. That was about it. And we're like, we still don't have the answers. So, but we had to go back to see it in more of a calm state of mind to see what the heck was going on. And we still couldn't figure it out.
This is essentially a snapshot of everything that you shared all rolled into one story, which I find very interesting.
Yeah, pretty much.
The thud, like, what is that? Is that where the sound that the quote unquote Bigfoot makes? Well, maybe it really is a Bigfoot that goes through a portal, but is that the sound that they make when they go to the other side? I don't know.
We thought about it, and we're like, okay, it's running so quick. A person can't stop that quickly. I can't, even an Olympic athlete, I don't think they could just stop on a dime like that. But the thud, it's almost, if you can imagine someone, let's picture you're in your house and your front door is open or something, and there's a little bit of a ledge there, and you run as quick as you can through your house, through that door, and you jump off the ledge, and it's bump, bump. That's what it sounded like. And it was so loud and so heavy. Like I said, we could feel it under our feet.
So maybe,
and then we didn't hear anything else.
So you're getting at that maybe it jumped into a tree somehow and you didn't see it?
It seems like it went behind a tree and then it was just gone.
Yeah. That's weird. That's a weird one. Because how does that sound relate to what it can accomplish, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was so strange. That was top of everything. I'm like, all right, this is it. I'm gonna talk to Shannon and see what the heck is going on.
You're like, okay, I'm getting the sign. Time to share. Did the dogs react in all of these goings on?
So that last time, that the thing that we saw, he had our husky, I had our Chiweenie, and they were kind of looking towards the sound like, what in the heck is that? But they reacted the same way we did, in that it happened so quickly that it's like the husky, he perked his ears up and looked over towards there, but he didn't freak out. He just was like, "What did I just see?" Like, he was just staring there like we were, almost like he wasn't sure that he saw anything either.
I
Because
mean,
like, his ears were back and stuff, but otherwise, it wasn't like he was on alert like he saw a person.
right. So you have, yeah, because you have knocking, you have I'll call it the not bird. You have a
Yeah.
faint whistle, a holler, someone or something running up on you. And
Mhm.
again, just like the quote unquote dude when you went out just with your daughter to, attempt to get some target practice in, didn't happen because you got creeped out.
Mhm.
Why didn't this someone or something just not execute that path? I mean, it really went out of its way to seemingly run at you, be as loud as freaking possible, do this really weird shisa, and it was extremely noticeable. I mean, it could have just turned around and gone the other way.
Yeah. The only thing we can think is, like, again, with the dimensional thing is did it have to get there? You know? Did it have to get to that spot
Right.
as quickly as possible, or it wasn't gonna be able to get to where it needed to be, and so it didn't matter that we were there? It's strange. That's the strangest one that we don't even know how to explain it.
Now I know that you were behind Kyle. You
Mhm.
mentioned about 10 feet, right? So if
Mhm.
you were behind him, uh, would there be a rational reason for you to not see at all this quote unquote person in the possible Carhartt
Mhm.
type jacket, this tan color that Kyle talked about? I don't, because I don't know how fast this whole thing went, or,
Yeah.
well, what I'm asking do you think it's abnormal that you didn't actually see this, or, it was so fast and you didn't know to look up in that direction? Is there anything strange to that aspect of it?
A little bit. So when I heard the noises happening, I actually kind of assumed that it was happening off to my left, up above kind of where we had just come from, and that it was running down the hill. But when it happened, I was looking forward towards them, and that's when I saw that blur of like I I can only think of it as like a tree trunk shaped thing, just whoop, like really quickly. But the trees, the way they were growing too, um, it kind of it was a little thicker, and so the visibility wasn't completely open,
Okay.
if that makes sense. Almost
Absolutely.
like I just saw a little bit of it, and he was more ahead of me, so his
Right.
point of view was different than mine.
Okay. So yeah, so there may not be anything strange to that. I just wondered if, because as we've already mentioned, some things seem to be maybe possibly more tailored to
Yeah.
one or the other of you.
Yeah, this felt more like a physical thing. Like, compared to the other things, it feels more not physical, but this one, it did seem like something physically running through the forest really, really fast.
Until it wasn't, though. But that's
Yeah.
assuming that, as you mentioned, the ledge situation, which that's where my brain was going to, and I was going to bring it up, and you said it. I was like, you're awesome. This whole taking a little leap and then jumping into a tree. But then how do for the most part, I would assume one of you guys would have seen that, or then because it could move the brush around it, obviously.
Yeah.
That also should have made some movement. If there's something big, or even, it doesn't even have to be that big. Hell, you could take a big ass squirrel jumping into a tree and it makes a god awful noise, and you could see the brush moving. You could see a branch moving.
Mhm.
So you should have been able to see it jump into a tree. So, my
Yeah.
brain is trying to go off of way far woo, where it went into a portal behind the little stump,
Mhm.
to the flesh and blood. It took two thump steps and jumped into a tree. But
Yeah.
that's tough because you didn't get a sense that anything jumped into a tree.
No. Well, and so that too, like, when we were coming back, I pictured it completely different. Like, when I was looking down towards the area that we had come from, that it had just happened because we were going so quick to get out of there. I was looking down and I thought I had seen like a stump with some trees around it. And then we go back the second time and it's It almost seemed different, and it's like, I don't know if it was actually just that in that moment we were in such a rush that I was interpreting things differently, and in reality it was different, or if it was actually different. Like, we had a hard time finding that spot again because it seemed so different from how it looked the first time we were there.
Mm. Yeah,
And
heard that
he got
before.
a better yeah, he got a better look than I did. I'm like, "Did we go to somewhere else and we were somewhere else?
Right,
And this was happening in that space?"
right.
And then we went back and we were in the actual space that's there, you know? Like, I don't it's so hard to say.
Yeah, that's pretty creepy, Carrie, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it creeped me out because what we really did, we went past the area. The only way we could figure out the second time we went back where it actually was is that it's like there's like a kind of like a rocky kind of hillside area, which was where I was hearing the sound coming from, and then it flattens out and then it goes back up again. And we didn't go any further down the trail to where it goes back up again, but when we went back the second time, we couldn't figure out where the heck it was. We got past the rocky area and it looked all different. I'm like, this looks more grown. Like, there's more greenery around here that I don't remember being here before. And it was all flat. And we walked past that spot and started to go back uphill again. And we're like, no, this doesn't look familiar. We didn't go this far. So we turned back around and we're like, this has to be it. And that's when we saw like there was like a bare grassy area right there that didn't it was different from everywhere else in the woods. Like, it was a clearing almost. It was just strange.
How big of a clearing?
Pretty small. Like maybe 4 feet wide by 8 to 10 feet long. Like a little like a little runway almost in the middle of all the trees. And there's like new growth. Like, there's like small little trees all over that, again, I don't remember those even being there. But like I said, it's hard to say because we booked it out of there so quick. It's like we didn't look around very much. I wanted to get out of there. He wanted to explore, but he also had our kid on his back. So I didn't think that was a good idea.
Now you just need Black Phillip and the Naked Witches, and the place is complete. I mean, this one's got it all. And this,
Yeah.
I mean, this was recent. This was just last month.
Yeah, this was in September. And then, like I said, like we went back about, I think it was not this last weekend, but the weekend before.
I know certain places are not snowing as much as they normally do, especially last year, I think was a lot less. But is this an area that gets quite a bit of snow, or are you guys planning on going, back there? Or
It gets snow. They actually just recently got snow, I think, this week. So that's why I wanted to go back quickly, because I'm like, if we don't go back now, we probably won't go back.
right? Oh, that was creepy.
Yeah, that one really creeped us out.
Hey, so if you ask Kyle straight out, and just like I said to you, he's not going to know. But what's his opinion on what it was that was running?
He doesn't know. I mean, like most things, it's like, is it Bigfoot? But all these stories of Bigfoot, all these people that say they saw Bigfoot, they say they saw this hairy man that just was loping along in the forest. So we don't know. It just looked like a tall person that moved really, 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 really fast, like a blur. And I asked him, like, you sure you didn't see, like, did you see where the arms hit? Did you see the shape of it? And he's like, no, he saw the side profile of someone running as fast as they could. And he's like, and I don't even know running. He's like, he said the most he could compare it to is what someone says a ghost looks like, because it was so fast.
Now, the large tree stump cluster that you mentioned,
Yeah.
describe the dimensions as closely as you can. I mean, it's tough, but height wise, width wise, if somebody like say a 6 foot tall person was walking around there, what would that look like when if they tried to crouch or run behind there?
I don't think they could have hid behind it. It was like maybe, from what I remember, and this was the first time, because the second time we went back, we didn't even see that. It's like it wasn't there. But the first time I remember seeing, it was like a stump. It was like a large like an old growth type of tree stump that was maybe 4 or 5 feet tall, with some other living trees right next to it, and it was like sandwiched kind of in the middle of it. And I thought the first time I remember seeing like some sticks and stuff leaning against it as well. But then, like I said, when we went back, it didn't look the same. It didn't seem like it was the same area. And so
But you
even,
could find that stump, right?
no, like there was a tree that was down near there, where there was a stump, but it was small.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it looked different. And we've actually debated over it afterwards. Like, what do you remember? He's like, I remember it this way. And I'm like, well, I remember it this way. And it's frustrating because it's like, what did we actually see? And I'm kicking myself for being too freaked out to like take my phone out and take pictures or a video or something that I can actually look at and say for sure what we saw. And even the second time around, I was so unsure that that was the same area that I didn't even record it then. We actually found a lion's mane mushroom on the backside of one of the trees that he thought it ran behind. I took a picture of him holding the mushroom, but otherwise I didn't take any videos or anything of that area just to look at and say, like, compare it to.
Yeah, but honestly, you telling that story and me just sitting here like trying to put myself in that spot and all those things happening in succession, that it's pretty damn creepy stuff.
Yeah, it was creepy.
So I wouldn't kick yourself too much for being like, well, we should have hung out and like, nah, I don't. Especially looking back now, you're going, we couldn't even really find that spot. That's another layer of, yeah, maybe you guys walked into another place. I don't know.
Yeah. It was so strange. Like it didn't make sense because the second time we went back, it's it's a green area, and what I was hearing was snapping and breaking and like it was running through some dried up stuff.
Mm. That is some creepy shisa. I'm sorry. That it's cool and creepy all in one. It's nope and yes and all of it.
Yeah.
I just find it funny that it really did. It just said, you know what? I'm gonna take all the elements of everything I've been screwing with them up till now and put it into one event, and let's see how they handle this.
Yeah, that was strange, and that's the thing too, is it's like we went to a different area. Like this is like 3 hours away from home. So if this is a physical thing, how in the heck is it happening out there too?
Yeah. Yeah, this took the one that changed my mind and then amplified it by 100-fold. Because yeah, it's definitely not close to the original events.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the not bird. Like, what the heck was that? Why?
I
Why do they
couldn't
show you
figure that
these
out.
things? Right? Why do they?
Yeah.
Oh, and if you had taken a friend along with you, would they have experienced the same thing? Would any of it have happened at all?
Exactly.
You know what? That's a question then. Is it always just you or your daughter or you and Kyle going out? Or have you ever taken a friend or a family member and, then there's nothing going on?
Well, there was another time that was a completely different area. My mom came to visit and we went hiking up. There's how do I describe this? There's a trail, there's a lake area where it has a front entrance. So there's a trail that goes the front side of it. And then there's a trail that also goes the back side of it that's completely different. So we took the back way. We were hiking along and we were hearing kind of some noises like sticks breaking, and I think we heard a knock off to the in the distance, and my mom's pretty skeptical. And I was like, "Mom, did you hear that?" And she's like, "Oh, it's probably just an animal." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right." So we kept walking, kept hearing some things, and even our dog was freaking out. He was like trying to get up the hillside towards something. And Kyle and I were kind of looking at each other like, "Do you see this? Do you see what's going on right now?" And we didn't want to freak her out. Like I said, she's skeptical, so I don't think that she would really didn't seem like she was open to any of it. So we were just kind of keeping it to ourselves. And we get back to the parking area and we're talking. And I go, "Do you smell that?" And my mom's like, "Yeah, kind of." I'm like, "That smells like someone's making a pot of coffee like right next to us." And this is a heavily forested area. There's not a campground nearby. Like, yes, there could have been someone camping off the side, somewhere not in a campground, but not near enough to us to where it literally smelled like we were in a room with a coffee pot brewing coffee. And I'm like, "That smells like coffee." And she's like, "I smell that." And I'm like thinking, did someone dump their coffee at a trailhead or something? And I'm looking around like, no, because it didn't smell that way when we got there, but it smelled that way when we got back. Then it went away and that was it. And we're like, what? That was strange. That one was really strange because it's like, why would we smell coffee randomly? And I know I've heard or seen after looking online that there are trees that secrete like a smell that smells similar to coffee. But I would think, just like I said, we would have smelled it when we got there. And this parking area is pretty open, it's pretty big, and it's cleared. So there's no trees that are very close to us that would put off a smell. And so that was strange. And otherwise, though, he and we go hiking alone. We don't typically go with anybody else.
Well, the coffee smell is heads and tails above smelling human feces
Yeah,
when you're out and about. That's nice. At least there's
yeah.
that. Still very strange, though.
I'd rather smell the coffee.
Heck yes. Well, Kari, I truly appreciate you deciding to come on, and
Yeah.
I hope that you guys keep in touch. And I know that probably you may not be going out hiking as much with it being super cold and snowy where you are, but yeah, please keep in touch with me. And if anybody gets in touch and says, "Oh my gosh, I heard Kari's episode. Here's what happened to me," I will be forwarding all of that along to you. And then, it's of course up to
Cool.
you if you wanted to get in touch, or you and I could just chat about it. Because anytime there are people that get their minds jogged with something, then they usually choose to reach out, which is nice. I appreciate that very much, and I really appreciate all your time on this Saturday. Thank you for taking the time out.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thanks for listening and hearing me out. It's the first time I've really told anybody about all of it, so it's been nice.